Good day each and everyone. My name is Cassey Ivy Abinal and today we will tackle about the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas as created by the Republic Act number 7653. Before anything else, let me show you the seal of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. So, on the left side is the old logo and on the right side is the new logo. So, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas introduced a new logo in keeping with the changing times. Full-bodied Philippine eagle rendered in gold, taking inspiration from various wildlife photographs of actual Philippine eagle. The use of the Philippine eagle in the new logo is intended to represent the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas as well as the Filipino people which it serves. Let me give you an overview. Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is the central bank of the country. Our country, Philippines. It is established in July 3, 1993. Formerly, the central bank of the country was Central Bank of Philippines, established on January 3, 1949. So to better understand, let's discuss it furthermore. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is the Central Bank of the Republic of the Philippines. It was established on July 3, 1993, pursuant to the provisions of the 1987 Philippine Constitution and the new Central Bank Act of 1993. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas took over, again, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas took over the Central Bank of the Philippines. Again, the two are different, which was established on January 3, 1949 as the country's central monetary authority. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas enjoys fiscal and administrative autonomy from the national government in the pursuit of its mandated responsibilities. Declared policy of the state. Based on the law in creating or establishing Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, Section 1, the state shall maintain a central monetary authority that shall function and operate as an independent and accountable body corporate in the discharge of its mandated responsibilities concerning money, banking, and credit. So it tells that the state shall maintain a central monetary authority. In line with this policy and considering its unique functions and responsibilities, the Central Monetary Authority established under this act, while being a government-owned corporation, shall enjoy fiscal and administrative autonomy. So the nature of Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is a government-owned corporation. Thus, it enjoys fiscal and administrative autonomy. The creation of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is specifically mentioned in Section 2. It mentioned that there is hereby established an independent central monetary authority which shall be a body corporate known as the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, meaning it is mandated in our law that we refer to our central bank as the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and not anymore the Central Bank of the Philippines. We also have the constitutional mandate. Article 12, Section 20 Constitution, the Congress shall establish an independent central monetary authority, the member of whose governing board must be a natural-born Filipino citizens of known probity, integrity, and patriotism, the major of whom shall come from the private sector. So, this article gives us the reason why the Congress established an independent central monetary authority, because this article tells so that they must establish a central monetary authority, and that's why they established the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Responsibility and primary objective. First is to provide policy directions in the areas of money, banking, and credit. In short, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is obliged to establish or provide monetary policy. Second is to have supervision over the operations of banks and exercise such regulatory powers as provided by law. Third, to maintain price stability conducive to a balanced and sustainable growth of the country. So, price stability, which will be later on discussed. Lastly, to promote and maintain monetary stability and convertibility of the peso. Take note also of the two kinds of policy, the fiscal policy and the monetary policy. When we say fiscal policy, responsible are the government in the passage of law, particularly the Congress. And the monetary policy, it is under the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. So these two policies, the fiscal and monetary, must work hand in hand and they are also intertwined. So here is the current organizational chart of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas as of January 2020. So this is the summary actually. We have the Monetary Board. Under the Monetary Board is the Governor, and under the Governor are the Monetary and Economic Sector, Financial Supervision Sector, Corporate Services Sector, and the Payments and Currency Management Sector. So if you want something complex, then let's proceed with the next slide. So if I will ask you, who is the governor of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas? It is none other than Benjamin E. Jokno. We also have the Monetary Board members, Carlos G. Dominguez III, Felipe M. Medalla, Peter B. Favila, Antonio S. Abacan Jr., V. Bruce J. Tolentino, and Linda R. Aquino. Now we have learned the roles, the organizational structure, the overview of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Now let's look at the monetary policy in the Philippines. So the monetary policy in the Philippines is under changing approach because over the years there are changes in monetary policy because one monetary policy per particular period of time may not be the best monetary policy in the next years. What is the primary objective of the BSP? It is to maintain price stability conducive to a balanced and sustainable growth of the economy and the employment. So we can define price stability in two ways, according to Alan Blinder and according to Alan Greenspan. According to Alan Greenspan, an environment in which inflation is sufficiently low that is no longer a consideration in the economic decisions of the household and firms, and the other one is that prices are stable when ordinary people stop talking about inflation. So, in simple terms, we can say price stability on average is where prices neither increase nor decrease markedly, or when there is low or stable inflation. So, meaning, low yung pag-increase ng prices of goods and services which are typically purchased by the consumers. So what BSP do is they manage the cash flow in the Philippine financial system. If there is too much money, they contract. If there is low money, then they expand. They also protect the OFWs, the remittances of the OFW. So what is monetary policy? When we say monetary policy, these are the actions by a central bank to manage the availability. When we say availability, the level of money or credit supply which a central bank can directly control. So this refers to the influence overall demand for goods and services. And cost, when we say cost, it is the price of savings or investments which influences how much and where money goes. So these refer to the manage the supply and cost of money and credit. So to manage the supply and cost of money and credit, this could actually refer to the price of money and credit, and when we say to influence over demand for goods and services, the level of money and credit. So these two are important to attain the price stability. So monetary policy manages the inflation by influencing aggregate demand and hence output growth in the economy. You might be wondering why, if the BSP is the ones responsible for producing money, so why can't they produce a lot of it? It is because if they produce a lot of money, this will result to the increase in the prices of the goods. So this will result to inflation. And even though the prices increase, of course, yung mga tao is maraming pera, then they are able to avail or afford to buy those goods kasi nag-increase yung purchasing power. So, with that, kung na-avail ng lahat yung goods and services, marami yung demand. And if marami yung demand, than the supply, so mangyayari is magkakaubusan. And what if liitan nila yung pag-produce ng money? So, hindi naman pwede because this would result to lower growth rate of the country. I mean the GDP of the country. So, when we say GDP, this is the growth rate of the country. And also, again, I have told you earlier that they are the ones who protect the remittances of the OFW so that yung dollar would not fall into lower amount. For example, if 50, it would not fall to 30 or 20. So, it could be, pwedeng mabawasan lang siya ng up to 48 lang yung equivalent niya. So, yun. So, the managing of the BSP can either be contractionary or expansionary. So first, let's look at this picture where there is a faucet, there is a person, flow of money. So we can think of the monetary policy as the faucet. Again, yung monetary policy as the faucet. And then the person is the one who controls the faucet, which is the BSP. And the water is the supply of money in the economy. So the one who is controlling the monetary policy is the BSP. So when this contractionary is done, so when there is too much money, from the word contractionary, pinapalit. So when there is too much money in the economy supporting overall demand for goods and services, which in turn increases inflationary pressures, the BSP tightens the faucet to reduce the money supply. This action dampens demand, which could lead to lower inflation. So again, this is done when there is too much money, because when there is too much money, it results to inflation. So what are the actions of the BSP? Again, if there is too much money, so there would be higher spending, and the chances are suppliers encouraged to increase the prices, which result to the increase in the inflationary pressure. So what will the BSP do? So they will they will give higher interest rates. Why? Because when there is higher interest rates, this would discourage credit or utang. So when the credit is discouraged, lower yung purchasing power, which results to more savings and also less spending. On the other hand, expansionary is done when there is too little money. So, kumbaga, if there is too little money, yung faucet is niluluwagan ng BSP so that mag-increase yung flow ng money in the economy. Because if there is too little money, it results to lower purchasing power of the people. So, what will happen is mag-decrease yung demand of the goods and services. So, ang lugi na naman this time is yung suppliers. So, what will the BSP do? What are the actions? First is to lower interest rates. Because if we will lower the interest rates, it will increase the credits, or it will encourage people to do credit. And if mag-encourage to do credit, then the purchasing power of the people will increase, which results to less savings and more spending. The Philippine economic and financial landscape has greatly shaped the evolution of the country's central banking in the last 70 years. To better respond to these challenges, the conduct of central banking had also evolved through the adoption of different monetary policy frameworks. So these monetary policy frameworks is like a cycle in which one factor affects the other. So, in the economic and financial challenges or conditions. So, economically and financially, we analyze the health of economy as well as the financial sector. Next to the central bank's charter. So, the law that creates the central bank. Therefore, the central bank can estimate policy objectives. And finally, in the objectives, they can lay out their monetary policy framework, would then have impact on, again, in the economic and financial health of the country and so on. So it is like a cycle, or it is a cycle. So here is a glimpse in the BSP's monetary policy over the years. So in 1940, a rehabilitation efforts after the war. In 1950, safeguarding initial growth efforts through exchange rate and trade controls, which is more on role of international trade. In 1960s, heading toward a more market-determined exchange rate through the control of the Philippine peso. In 1970s, stabilizing the economy on a sounder footing by managing the country's level of liquidity, foreign exchange, operating reserves, and domestic and foreign debt. In 1980s, navigating through turbulent times by currency stabilization and financial reforms, and in between 1980s and 1990s is a monetary policy framework which is more on monetary aggregate targeting. In 1990s, the gaining policy independence essential to the achievement of long-run price stability objective. In between 1990s and 2000 is the modified monetary aggregate targeting, and in 2000 is moving toward inflation targeting to focus mainly on price stability as the primary objective of monetary policy. So again, here is set that the main focus is the price stability, which is our main objective of the BSP, and in between 2000 and in the present is the inflation targeting. So before starting with the monetary aggregate targeting, let me discuss first quickly the money aggregates. We have the M1, M2, M3, and M4. When we say M1, this is the money in circulation and peso deposits subject to check or the transferable deposits. M2 is the M1 plus other deposits included in broad money like savings and time deposits. And M3 is the M2 plus securities other than shares included in broad money like deposit substitutes. And when we say M4, this is the M3 plus transferable and other deposits in foreign currency. The monetary aggregate targeting is a kind of monetary policy framework between 1985 to 1995 which is very rigid or strict. So in which central bank announces an annual growth target of monetary aggregates. So they are setting targets and the central bank determines the level of money supply needed to achieve a desired level of inflation. So in here, M3 serves as the money supply and the base money as the operating target. In implementing this, we have these assumptions. First is there is a stable and predictable relationship between money output and inflation. The change in money supplies triggers change in price or inflation. Stable velocity of money, and central bank controls domestic liquidity. Modified monetary aggregate targeting is the BSP's monetary policy framework in between 1995 to 2001. In compared to the monetary aggregate targeting, This is more flexible and less strict because instead of focusing on attaining targets, they would also look at the impact on the price stability. So in here, greater emphasis on the price stability. So instead of focusing on the attaining the target set, and the enhanced effectiveness of monetary policy by complementing monetary aggregate targeting with some form of inflation targeting. Monetary targets could be exceeded as long as inflation targets are met. Monitors tar- monitors larger set of economic variables in making decisions regarding appropriate stance of monetary policy. Inflation targeting is the BSP's monetary policy frameworks in between 2002 and in the present. So remember that the primary objective of the BSP's monetary policy is to promote price stability conducive to a balanced and sustainable growth of the economy. So this is according to Republic Act 7653. So the adoption of inflation targeting framework of monetary policy in 2002 is aimed at achieving the objective. So the inflation targeting is focused mainly on achieving a low and stable inflation, supportive of the economy's growth objective. So this approach entails the announcement of an explicit inflation target that the BSP promises to achieve over a given time period. So the government sets inflation target. So the BSP announces inflation target, and the BSP assesses its monetary condition and forecasts inflation. And if the inflation forecast in line with target, if yes, so they will not change the policy settings. And if the inflation forecast is not in line with the target, so that is the time that the BSP will adjust the policy or the monetary policies. And the BSP communicates through press statements, highlights of monetary board meetings, inflation reports, and open letter to the president. Again, this is the governor, Benjamin Jokno. So, according to him, for central bankers, understanding inflation dynamics in relation to the other economic variable is crucial. Most, if not all, central bankers will agree with me that controlling inflation is a demanding task. Yes, the central bank can influence inflation by, again, tightening or the contractionary and easing or the expansionary monetary policy. We also have the monetary tools. Examples, we have the moral suasion, open market operation, quasi-lending facility, quasi-money, overnight lending facility, rediscounting, redeposit account and reserve money, reserve requirement, special deposit discount, expansionary tool, and so much more.